Hello, everyone. Hi. Ooh, I like the call and response. I'm Nancy Merritt. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Alumni Relations here at Pitt, and thank you all for joining us today. The Pitt Alumni Association is pleased to be hosting this university update by Chancellor Gallagher. And judging by the enthusiasm of this group, I'm sure you're all excited to be hearing from him as well. This event is being broadcast on the web and simulcast at the Oaklander Hotel, where students and alumni of the Panthers Forward program are celebrating the second year of the Chancellor's innovative Student Debt Relief Initiative. So a warm welcome to everyone in person and online. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Chancellor Pat Gallagher. Chancellor Gallagher is the University of Pittsburgh's 18th Chancellor. He oversees a community of more than 34,000 students and 14,000 faculty and staff members across 5 distinct campuses, all working to advance Pitt's mission to make the world a better place through knowledge, learning, and scholarship. Chancellor Gallagher holds a bachelor's degree in physics and philosophy from Benedictine College in Kansas and a PhD in physics from Pitt. Please join me in welcoming Chancellor Gallagher.
Thank you. Happy homecoming. It's great to welcome you all back to campus. I'm obviously thrilled to see so many Pitt alum come back, join the family for homecoming weekend, and to catch up with friends, make some new friends, and also hopefully to catch up on all the things that are happening around campus. So I want to thank all of those who are also watching online. In addition to our Panthers Forward group, I believe our School of Computing Information is also streaming this online, so shout out to them as well. How many alumni in the crowd? All right. How many for the first time coming back to homecoming? Any first-time folks? Well, welcome. We're glad you're here. Anyone from outside Pennsylvania? I know we got to have a big cohort there. And I'll talk a little bit about that. It's one of our interesting 10s. And finally, any Miami fans? We had one there. Okay, just checking. So I want to thank you all for taking part of this event. We're going to, as we celebrate Pitt and the role that it plays in our lives and in our community. And so whether you've traveled across the country, across borders, across town, you've taken steps to kind of maintain that connection with Pitt, and we really appreciate that here at the university. We're starting a new tradition in some ways with this event. This update isn't something we've done before, but we thought you would enjoy hearing kind of an inside scoop about the university's activities, the momentum. Looking forward to having a chance for you to ask some questions and see what's on your mind as I tell you a little bit about some of the things going on. First of all, just as a starting point to kind of level set, as a fellow alum, we have kind of a lot in common to start with. We've all, eaten at the O at midnight and climbed Cardiac Hill to watch a Panthers game. But from my perspective, Pitt prepared me so well for a career. Leaving Pitt with my doctorate in physics, with some vague idea of what I was going to do. I did a postdoc at Boston University. But then ended up having a very fulfilling career in public service with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. First as a researcher. Actually, I thought I was going to be there temporarily. It turned out to be a very long temporary stay. But finally, in public service, leading an agency that's kind of a remarkable agency with a deep history, or the nation's oldest research agency of all. And as remarkable as that career was, the one thing that could make me leave it was to come back here to Pitt. So I can't tell you how excited I am to be part of this university today and what it's doing. And in the next several minutes, I'd like to kind of share with you some highlights. It's not a full list of everything that's happening, but I hope it gives you a sense of some of the excitement and momentum that's happening around the university. We really do have, even though this is a very turbulent time, a lot of things happening in higher education, right? We have presidential candidates talking about higher ed. We have Congress talking about it. We have a lot of high interest, but we're approaching all of this turbulence from a position of enormous strength. Let me start with our academic picture. By almost any measure that you look at, Pitt is one of the leading public universities in the United States. Across almost every metric you can look at, we consistently place in the top 10 or the top 15 of universities in the United States, the public universities, whether that's through the AAU or through some of the national rankings that I'll talk about later. We have reached a point now where we are considered a leading university and others are following us in terms of modeling what we do and the role that we play. That puts us in a very small club of universities of enormous prestige. And one way to see that is actually directly through what our students are doing. We are attracting some remarkable students today. And if you're like me, you know, one of the most common claims you'll hear from a Pitt alumnus is, gee, I'm not even sure I could get here anymore. But that's a point of great pride, isn't it? Last year alone, we had a remarkable banner year in awards. We had a Schwartzman Scholarship, a Beinecke Scholarship, 9 highly competitive graduate research fellowships awarded by the National Science Foundation, 4 Goldwater scholarships. And you probably don't know what all of those are. Let me just give you a couple. The Goldwater is the most prestigious undergraduate scholarship in the natural sciences, engineering, or mathematics. And to have 4, which is the maximum an institution can have, is absolutely remarkable. It's a major achievement for the university. It's only the 3rd time in our university's history that all 4 of our nominees were named as Goldwater Scholars. We also had a record-breaking number of graduating Pitt students awarded Fulbright scholarships this year. This year's total was 13 Fulbrights. That shatters the previous record of 11 that we set in 2010. Now, these students are selected for exceptional academic merit and leadership potential, and after receiving their Fulbrights, they go around the world. These students have dispersed to 13 different locations around the world, from Brazil to Germany to India and South Korea. Each now has a unique opportunity to exchange ideas and help find solutions to truly problems at a global scale. And I want to acknowledge that the students who have done this work are supported by an amazing team, principally in our Honors College. Shout out to our interim dean, the Honors College right there. And kudos to all of you for supporting the students and helping them achieve these results. And one stands out that I want to highlight on, and that's, of course, the Rhodes Scholars. So Leah Petros graduated from Pitt in 2017. We knew Leah was going to go off and do amazing things. She had a Bachelor of Science degrees in neuroscience and economics and a minor in chemistry, which kind of tells you a little bit about Leah right there. And a year ago, she was named a 2019 Rhodes Scholar. There are only 32 Rhodes Scholarships awarded in the United States. And we're incredibly proud that she is representing Pitt abroad as an alumnus of this university as she pursues yet another degree in statistics at the University of Oxford. Now, our incoming student class, with this growing reputation, are sort of continuing this. Each class has been better than the one preceding it. It's kind of a remarkable trajectory. In the first-year class, ACT scores, grade point averages are up. The SAT scores are matching an all-time high. We are continuing to attract the very best students, not only from Pennsylvania, but increasingly from across the country. And I wanted to focus on that. A number of you mentioned that you were from out of state. Pitt set an all-time record for applications this year with more than 30,000 students applying to come to Pitt. And what is happening fundamentally is that the number of college-age students in the Commonwealth is about flat. It's pretty constant. And we are continuing to get our share. The number of Pennsylvania students isn't falling, but the growth that's happening for us is happening from this growing demand outside of Pennsylvania, particularly as our reputation becomes more and more national. And to give you an idea, you can see at the bottom of that, the top states of, in terms of numbers are nearby states where we have a longer track record, states like Maryland and New York, New Jersey. Anybody from those states here? All right, we've got a lot of students here from your home country there. But what's interesting is if you look at our fastest growth states, you'll see California, Texas, and New York. So we're seeing enormous growth in those high-growing, job-rich states, reflecting our spreading reputation. The other thing that that's doing, as you might imagine, as we recruit more and more nationally, is we're beginning to look more and more like the rest of the country. The class of 2023 is the most racially and ethnically diverse first-year class in Pitt's history. I said that last year as well, and I said it the year before. And so we continue a pattern of increasing the number of students from across the ethnic and underrepresented groups. African American and Latina students in particular are both up over the previous year and make up nearly 1/3 of the class, one-third of our incoming class identifies as belonging to an ethnic minority. And so you can see as we spread, we're beginning to really reflect the country as a whole. Our national and international rankings reflect this upward trend. They tell the story of a very highly selective, innovative, and high-quality public university providing great value to its students. And some of the national rankings in particular that we focus on, and some of the subject areas, we remain the #1 philosophy program in the world. Our health science programs, our fast-rising undergraduate business program, and our top-ranked physical therapy program, and many others are also at the very top of their rankings nationally. And this just showcases the exceptional education students can expect to get here. On the institutional level, the U.S. News & World Report National University Rankings, which is probably the most recognized of all the ranking agencies, saw Pitt move up a dramatic 13 positions this year, from number 70 overall up to number 57 out of 318 universities. In the public space, this puts us in the top 20 at number 18. So as I said, we continuously now are showing up in these very top rankings. Now, many of you know that Pitt is not just a great place to get education, but it's a research powerhouse. And I wanted to focus a little bit on our progress there. We are, by every measure, one of the top research institutions in the country. This year, Pitt set a new all-time record for sponsored research, eclipsing the previous record that we set last year. And what's interesting is that this dramatic rise, you can see the bump that happened shortly after the recession as the federal government put in all the stimulus funding, created a surge. That dissipated, and then Pitt continued to grow that. And in fact, our growth rate is accelerating, as you can see. This is against a backdrop where federal funding has not increased this fast. So our faculty are outcompeting their peers through this competitive peer review basis to win those awards. We rank number 10 in overall federal funding expenditures for research and development. And in the life sciences areas, many of you know, when we look at NIH funding, which is the largest funder there, we rank number 5 in the country, almost number 4. Give you some idea of our company in that space. In our club in the top 5 include Harvard, University of California, San Francisco, Johns Hopkins, and Penn, but we are above universities including Michigan, Columbia, Stanford, UCLA, Duke, and Yale. It's a remarkable company. Now, when you have that kind of research concentration here in Western Pennsylvania, and then you remember that we have another research-intensive university across the street with CMU. Those two together account for this 2-mile area accounts for 1/3 of the entire university R&D in the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This is more R&D per capita than Raleigh, Seattle, Atlanta, Philly, or Washington. So we are being recognized as an innovation hotbed for that reason. There is simply a lot of brain power right here in Oakland. Now, another interesting detail about our research is, of course, we are increasingly seeing those research results being put to work through commercialization and patenting and invention disclosures and licensing. And this is an area where Pitt had a mixed reputation. Everyone knew we had a great research enterprise, but we were known a little bit as a sleeping giant when it came to commercializing. And in fact, many of you, like I, probably remember people talking about CMU in that context, but not Pitt. Well, let me tell you, that has really totally changed. When you look at rankings, Pitt is ranked again in the top 10 to 15 nationally in university technology commercialization. And we are, again, setting new records every year in terms of the number of spin-out companies based on university innovations, the amount of intellectual property that's being created, or the number of transactions that are licensing our discoveries. And we now are doing that to a degree far greater than any other university in the region. So comparing, let's just have fun and compare to CMU. So, just for fun. Again, just going at that sort of idea that we've all sort of had. Last year, Pitt spun off 17 new companies based on university IP, and CMU spun off 13. So we're in the same league. But if you look over the past 5 years and look at the sum, because these numbers go up and down a little bit, Pitt spun off 70 new companies in that period of time, 55% more than CMU. So Pitt is basically doubling the production of some of these, which isn't saying CMU isn't great. It's reflecting the magnitude of the research enterprise here at the University of Pittsburgh. And of course, these two technology areas are incredibly complementary. One focused on technology and AI and other high growth areas, in Pitt, of course, predominantly focused on the health sciences and medical sciences. It is a potent combination. But I want to kind of put a human touch on the research story. Graham Hatfull is a professor here at the University of Pittsburgh in biology. He's very highly regarded in his field. He's supported by the prestigious Howard Hughes Medical Institute. But he's known to our undergraduates as somebody that collaborates. And what they get to do in his lab is discover phages. Now, how many of you know what a phage is? This is a pretty, okay, well, let me tell you. A phage is basically a virus that infects a bacteria, which sounds like a good thing, right? It's finally we get back at them. So, and these are everywhere, but they're not widely known. So Graham has turned them into an incredible tool, an educational tool, where our students, our undergraduates, go out and discover phages, document them for the very first time to get their names in publications, and get to name them. You should see some of the names they come up with. Well, last year, Graham learned of a girl named Isabel in England who was struggling with a bacterial infection in her lungs. And since she had cystic fibrosis, her medical team was struggling to control this. They had tried every antibiotic they could think of, and candidly, she was given less than a 1% chance of surviving. So her family took that news home. Were told to make her comfortable because there was nothing else that could be done. So her mom did what we might have done. She turned to her favorite doctor, the internet, and asked the question, what kills bacteria? And that search led her to finding Graham. So she found the Hatfull lab and asked them whether phages could be put to work there. This had never been tried in a patient before. So Graham's team looked at all of this, these phage that we had based on this undergraduate work. They found 2 out of the many thousands they had. They genetically engineered them to make them more potent, and they gave Isabel a cocktail of these 2 engineered phages, and she responded immediately. Within days, it was clear she was fighting off the infection that she was told would kill her. And this story circled the globe this year. It was covered in CNN and in Science magazine, and Graham got to meet Isabel in person. And I have to tell you, this was such a remarkable story because phage research wasn't something that was going out to do this. It was curiosity-driven research to understand the world around us, and here we were involving our students. They were doing discovery for a purpose that wasn't well defined, and here it turns out it was a life-saving therapy. So people like Graham and the students and the researchers, they're all over this campus. The team from our Swanson School of Engineering recently was inspired by their studies of an insect called the glasswing butterfly. And so they engineered a new type of glass with random nanostructures smaller than the wavelengths of visible light, like the butterfly's wings. And this glass is anti-reflective, low haze, 99.5% transparent, and super hydrophobic, which means when you spill your orange juice, milk, coffee, and everything else we spill on our phones, it doesn't go in. So it's clearly a potential new material for the next advance in touchscreens. Another team at Pitt this year have been working on developing a brain-computer interface enabling quadriplegic patients to control a robotic arm based simply on their thoughts. And in a research study here, a man with no movement in arms or legs made a robotic arm reach out and touch his girlfriend's hand for the first time. He did that spontaneously through this interface, and it really brings home the impact of the work that's done here in such a human way. And I have to tell you, we're just at the very beginnings. This new wave of research that's happening here, we are at the forefront of this biological life sciences revolution, and these kind of stories are just the beginning of what's possible. So it's incredibly exciting to be at the front line right here in Pittsburgh. Now, the other thing that's happening around campus that you might have noticed if you haven't been here in a while is there are some new things happening. The students are a little upset with me because our favorite Bigelow Boulevard is about to be ripped up. But I want to explain what's happening. We have a master plan for the university. It's the first time we've really laid this out. We took a 20, 30-year look ahead to see what our campus needs might be. And some of the projects that are coming out of that are a redesign of the Bigelow Boulevard between 5th and Forbes. It's designed to make this safer and more beautiful, but this is a primary pedestrian corridor. As many of you know, if you've either walked it or if you've been sitting in a car waiting for all the students who are trying to cross in front. We also have a major renovation expansion of Scaife Hall, which is the home to, the William Pitt Union is the other one that's going to be redone as part of this as well. And then Scaife Hall, which is the home of our School of Medicine, is adding a wing. It's known as the West Wing. I'm sure that's tongue-in-cheek. But it's really where all the medical education takes place for our medical students, really for the first time bringing the 21st century medical education technology in classrooms to match this now world-class medical school. Planning is also underway right now for a fitness, health, and wellness center. It'll be right here on O'Hara Street, just up the street here, to serve students, faculty, and staff. It's situated where right now that parking lot and the LRDC, that strange stepped building, is located. This has, of course, been a major omission, something the students have been really looking for, a place where our clubs and activities and practice spaces and things can take place. So this will be a big addition to the student experience here on campus. And of course, our programs are also evolving, and I want to highlight 2 years ago, we added a new school. It was the first new school in quite a long time for the university, the School of Computing and Information, or as it's known now, SCI. The school has a bold mission, of course, of directing and preparing our students for this increasingly interconnected and competitive world of digital information and computing. But it's more than a computer science program, because the school enables and trains the students simultaneously in computation, but how it relates to particular fields, including the sciences and humanities. So the faculty at SCI view computing and information as a means of empowerment to solving really complex problems in any field, and they've taken that integration right into the design of the school and how these degrees are done. So this pioneering, innovating spirit is well underway even in our teaching. I want to talk a little bit about financial aid. Nancy mentioned it at the beginning. We have our Panthers Forward students, our new cohort listening in right now. Last year we launched this program, and the intent here was to come up with something to address the problem of student debt. As all of you know, you've read about this. It's one of the major problems in higher education. People, not everything is borne by scholarships or state support, and so some of the burden falls on families, and one way families accommodate that is they borrow. And this debt is, in many cases, stressful to the families because of the terms and the payback and so forth. So we wanted to see if there was a way of replacing it. So we came up with a program called Panthers Forward, where students apply for a $5,000 grant that is designed to forgive a federally held student debt. So if they get the grant, we take away the debt. Instead of being legally responsible for paying it back, like a loan, they sign a pledge that they will donate back in the future to replenish the fund that provided those grants. So it's a philanthropic model instead of a lending model. And what it does is it creates kind of a pay-it-forward dynamic. Former students from Pitt, our alumni, are essentially crowdsourcing support for students who are here today. Students and alumni love this idea. So to test that and make sure this worked, last year we selected 150 students as our first cohort. They received this, they graduated, and they're now in this program, now as alumni, paying back. And our second cohort class was just selected, and that's the group that's meeting right now with their alumni ambassadors. So it turns out when you ask the students, they of course love the debt forgiveness, but what do you think the number one value that they get from this program is? They get to interact with you. It came up over and over again. The idea that you now have a relationship with the alumni because they're the ones, so it was that connection with the alumni that was the most valuable thing that came from this, which means we have to reduce this discontinuity that happens from when you're a student to when you're alumni. There's an incredible appetite to bring these two together, and we hope that you will consider jumping in and being part of this amazing program. So our students are watching right now. The mentors are there, and they're joined by these new Pitt seniors who are, by the way, we only did this for seniors, so we haven't expanded the program to multiple years, but they're now, and I would extend my congratulations to our Panthers Forward class of 2020. Let's give them a round of applause so they can hear. If you didn't hear that on your side, there's a loud round of applause. So we feel really good about these initiatives, but clearly the big financial news for this year was the introduction of our Pitt Success program. So all put together, Pitt Success, and I'll tell you a little bit about what it is, but it's the largest restructuring of Pitt financial aid in the university's history. What we did is we understand that loss of state support and other pressures have caused tuition to go up. That shifts more and more of the burden onto families. But frankly, that burden falls hardest on families with lower income. And so what we've done is that tuition increase we had this year, all of it is being plowed back into the students. And we did it in two ways. We are doubling the federal Pell grants. So students with need that are getting Pell grants, we basically said, we'll double that. So that's up to $5,000 there. And then Pell or non-Pell, we've issued grants that limit the amount of unmet need that our students have. Because we have found that the biggest barrier to students staying at Pitt and completing their degrees is the financial burden. And we looked at where that really began to be a problem, and we said we don't want any of our students to cross that line. So Pitt Success is designed to do that. It's a very major investment for the university. It does not achieve our goal, which ultimately is to have no unmet need. But it was the right step in the right direction, and we're very excited about it. Now that's the university, basically funding financial aid itself, a role that we find ourselves in increasingly as the federal and state governments provide less and less. But the other, of course, source of support for students is through philanthropy and gifts. And our highest priority in our ongoing philanthropy operations is student support and scholarships. So I hope, again, as you consider ways of giving back to the university, you'll give that a top priority as well. I wanted to highlight something we did this year at Pitt Day of Giving. So February 28th is Founders Day. That's when the university celebrates its founding in 1787. And we started this idea of Pitt Day of Giving, or as it's known around here, we always use acronyms, PDOG, because that sounds cool. There's some cool t-shirts and stuff that have already come out of that. And it's become a day where the goal is to maximize participation. Don't care how much people give, but we want people to get involved. And so what happens that day is there's challenges and social media and a website that opens up, and the number of donors and alumni donors and faculty and staff who have started in this young program, just been doing it for 2 years, has more than doubled in 2 years. And every year we have events on campus and around the world where alumni and Pitt friends gather to show their support for the university. So I'd ask you to mark your calendars for February 28th and help us set a new high water mark for Pitt Day of Giving. You may have noticed a new look around the university, or a new old look around the university. It's like ties. You keep them in your closet long enough, all they can do, they'll come back. But this is an amazing look. We're very happy to have the old new colors back on campus. You'll see it, of course, on our athletic teams. Nike came in and partnered with athletics to give Pitt a unique and brand new look. But the university itself has also rebranded in a matching way. So the actual major marks and themes of the university are mirroring this theme as well. The new Pitt Panther, which many of you have seen, the new Panther head, was inspired by the stone panther that's above the fountain outside the Cathedral of Learning. So you take a look over there and see the motivation, see if you would have drawn it that way if you were looking. But more importantly than the branding, you can feel the pride that's here on campus. And on our athletics side, there's just so much to brag about right now. So women's volleyball, 19-1. One loss. Penn State, I was there, and we almost won. But just to make you feel better, this is where they were beating Penn State, so you can see them walking up there. They've included 14 sweeps. They're ranked number 3 in the country. Men's soccer knocked off number 1 Virginia, previously unbeaten last week. They play at 7 o'clock today, right here, against Duke. Of course, Pitt football's on the move, and we're about to open Pitt basketball. So there's an excitement and a contagious enthusiasm across campus as all of our sports programs seem to be thriving at the same time. As Heather Lyke would say, comprehensive excellence is contagious, and I think we're seeing signs of that contagion here. One of the real measures of a university, we've been talking about statistics, but the real measure of a university, when you get right down to it, is the impact it's had on the people who went to it. So that makes all of you, our alumni, the best measuring sticks for how to gauge our university's success. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about our alumni and how broad and how deep this resource is. Our alumni are amazing. The ones on campus this weekend include our 2007 Rhodes Scholar and Pitt alumnus, Daryl Hermanos. Last night, we honored Pitt business alumnus Howard Hanna, the founder of Hanna Real Estate, number 3 real estate company in the United States, and pharmacy alumni Simone Myers-Karp and her brother Lloyd Myers. But we've seen this year Aaron Donald come back and make a major gift and get involved. We've seen our Nobel Peace Prize winner, Wangari Maathai, Peter Lauterbar, the winner of the Nobel Prize in Psychology and Medicine, and, of course, the 2 recent MacArthur geniuses, Terrence Hayes and Kevin Guskowski. Terrence won the National Book Award for Poetry. Dick Thornburg was back this year as we celebrated some of the great governors, and, of course, Dick is an alumnus of the university and many more. So we take great pride in bragging about the exceptional achievements of our alumni. But I want to remind you that collectively, as I've told you, our students, when they ask, when we talk about the value of a Pitt education, it really boils down to 3 things happening. One, of course, is the degree, right? They have to complete their studies and earn that degree, and that's we all know the power of that. But they also have to walk out with a goal, know what they're going to be doing next, even if it's a near-term goal. And we work a lot. That's where our experience-based learning comes in, and working in our laboratories and doing co-ops and getting experience and working in the community. It's not viewed as a success if you get that degree and don't know what you're going to do next, right? But the third thing is the one people often forget. You need a network. It matters. You need those connections with people. And so we want Pitt students to walk out with a degree, a goal, and a network. And the most powerful network we can give them is connecting them to the over 300,000 living Pitt alumni all around the world. So you can bring incredible value to this Pitt education right now for our students by just that engagement, welcoming them when they come into your community, giving those connections, and I want to thank all of you for doing that, because I know many of you do that all the time. Last week, I'll end up on just this kind of a human note. Kind of a cool story. Last week, the New York Times wrote a story about Sarah Aiken's wedding day. But it wasn't sort of a typical wedding story, because Sarah was a senior in our Pitt nursing program in 2009, and she was motivated to join the bone marrow donor registry. And a few years later, she ended up donating bone marrow, which is not a trivial procedure, to help save a little girl's life. Now, they didn't meet because of the donor privacy rules, but years later, they were able to exchange letters, and eventually, it resulted in a wedding invitation, and that's where the two met for the first time. And it's an amazing story to me, because it reminds me that being a Pitt alum is more than just the great careers and the other sort of professional milestones, the ones really direct, that connect to our diplomas, our areas of study. But it's also just about the kind of people we are. Committed to our communities, committed to each other, willing to do the right thing, even when it's hard. And I know that all of our Pitt alumni are like that. And this story just reminds me of how special it is and how proud I am to be your chancellor. So with that, thank you. Hail to Pitt. Enjoy the weekend, and look forward to your questions. Sure. Where do you want me, on this side?
All right, so now we are going to transition to our Q&A, or what it seems to be between two palms. So we did survey or solicit questions from alumni prior to this event, so I do have a few of those, but we have such a great and enthusiastic crowd here, so we will be opening up to the floor as well. But since I am here with you, I'm going to ask the first question.
Okay.
So earlier today, I met with an alumnus back for homecoming, first time back in over 30 years. Super enthusiastic, can't believe the changes on this campus. So I'm curious, as an alumnus, what about the Pitt you knew as a student has changed for the better?
This is going to sound kind of funny, but it's the feeling on campus. Look, Pitt was a great place when I was here. Now, my experience was a little unusual. Grad students are a little bit, introverted. There's the old joke about physicists, the difference between the extrovert and the introvert. Do you know the answer? The extrovert looks at your shoes when they talk to you. So we lived a very, silent life. But that time Pittsburgh was down. The economy was down, and we were a good university. But what you feel now is a palpable pride. The students know that they're part of something special. There's an excitement here. The faculty know that these students are coming in. In fact, what's fun is to talk to the faculty and realize that these students are actually pushing on the faculty. These students are that caliber and pushing us to be innovative. And that's contagious, and it's something you can feel. And that's true more than the brand changes of the buildings or the new restaurants or all the other stuff that here. There's we have our mojo here. There's really a lot of momentum around the place that's really exciting. And that's what I noticed when I came back. It felt like a different place. I think we're realizing that we're leaders now, and that's exciting.
Great, thank you. So we got one question from a business alumnus, class of 2018. How can we make sure the increasing strength and value of a Pitt education are recognized by employers nationwide to ensure companies consider hiring our graduates for highly competitive positions?
I'm hoping that's from an alumnus that had a highly competitive job and not one that's... So let me just say our alumni, including our recent alumni, are doing very well. One of the metrics that we monitor very closely is our post-graduation placement rate. So we look 6 months after graduation, we ask, are students working, or are they pursuing more education? And the number for Pitt is very high relative to our peers, and it's been very steady. It's 94%. So, our students are doing well. But I think, when I talk to young alum in particular, that's that statistic hides something that's happening. That early career phase is becoming more complicated these days. And particularly when you leave the region, that network problem. When you've had this incredible network here at Pitt with in Pittsburgh, you know all these people, and then you go to a new place where you're disconnected. And you see other places where students coming from other universities have those connections. So I think a couple of things really help. One is the growing national reputation of Pitt. The degree itself has more, brand recognition than it used to have, and that certainly is opening up doors. But I will tell you again, the most powerful effect of all is the local network. So if companies are employing Pitt people, that you know right away, the CEOs tell me, oh yeah, we've got Pitt alumni here, they're great, we work with them. So activating that alumni network wherever students are is the most potent way of doing it. And one of the things we hear from young alum is their appetite for creating sort of professional alumni networks, not just social and game watching and things that we often associate with being an alum, but professional networking opportunities. And when I go to areas like New York where we have a lot of young alum, that's the number one thing they want to talk about. And they're really anxious to contribute what they've learned already working in their new companies and to help open up the doors for students who are still here at Pitt. But they also are looking for more opportunities to network in that area. So I think we have to keep that network intact, and that's probably the most powerful thing we can do to support our students post-graduation, because the alumni are there.
Right, exactly. And thanks for making that plug. Let's go to the floor. I saw some people furiously taking notes during your presentation. So does anyone have any questions?
Or sketching, we don't know.
Doodling. We have
a couple
microphones. Since we're broadcasting this, yeah. Thank you.
Tell us who you are when you ask your question, too.
Check. Hello?
Yeah.
Hi. I'm Rob. I graduated in 2017, computer science background. Worked in the tech industry and began my career here at Pitt with some startups through the innovation programs that you mentioned earlier. One of the questions that I had is, as I've been working, I've noticed the power of CMU's network, especially in San Francisco, and as students matriculate. One of my questions to you is, kind of what are some of the steps that we've taken to really ensure that the innovations that we have in our labs and in our researchers, what kind of steps are we taking to ensure that we are commercializing those, or we're making it more friendly to commercialize those? Or could you just speak to me a little bit about that pipeline?
So we've been, this idea of kind of opening up the university has been a big theme here at Pitt. So I always say it's a little bit ironic since my office is in the Cathedral of Learning, but universities should not be ivory towers, right? They belong in society. That's what they're there for, is to create societal benefit. And one of the big benefits, of course, is all of that research that the federal government is investing in to make the country better and stronger and more prosperous is happening right on our campuses. And there's a bit of an obligation to make sure that that can be made useful. Now, there's a lot of ways to be made useful. Certainly publishing and scholarly, that's useful because you're advancing the frontier of knowledge. But some ideas are made useful by reducing them to practice. And there's a lot of what we've been doing is kind of just removing barriers to that. Dealing with conflict management and making sure that it's okay for faculty to go and start those companies, having our students own their IP so they can go out, putting in support like our new Innovation Institute, which is designed, you probably worked with them, provide those wraparound and support services. That's all working, and I think that's what's creating this uptick. The next challenge for Pitt, in some ways, is bigger than the university, and it's what's happening in Pittsburgh itself. So when you compare Pittsburgh with, let's say, Silicon Valley, you mentioned the West Coast with the IT side, one of the things that makes that such a vibrant area to start a company or to be an innovator is that not only startups, but you have mature companies. You have companies all along that pipeline, and those companies provide some of the talent, and you've got this talent pool. So Pittsburgh is still new. So we're creating startups, but we haven't had a lot of those gazelles that have taken off, that are homegrown companies. And so part of our strategy has got to be attracting companies here. Remember, companies are the largest performers of R&D in the United States. It's not the federal government. 2/3 of all the R&D that's done in this country is done by companies. So we want them doing it near us. And so I was at the airport today. The airport has land, and of course, Pennsylvania is a manufacturing hotbed. So one of the things they've done is they're creating an innovation campus right on the airport site. And I was there because Pitt was we were the thought leaders behind doing this, but the idea was to create a collaborative campus where companies working in a brand new area, additive manufacturing, 3D printing, get a low-cost infrastructure, with all the low-cost power and gases and all the stuff you need to make, printed metal parts, alongside collaboration with university engineering programs. So Pitt and CMU will locate some of our engineering there to support that. So that's a good example of that shoulder rubbing that we need to take off. But what's changing the culture fastest, interestingly enough, are the students. They want to do this, but probably like you did. It's one of the things we hear over and over again from the students is we want to get involved in these kind of activities. And I don't think it takes very long before that has become so contagious that we're going to find companies right here in Pittsburgh, much like a Silicon Valley, that are taking off. I just want to make sure that we create those collaboration zones where you kind of maximize the chance to interact. There's one back over here.
Take one anyway, if it works. I go back.
Tell us who you are so we can,
I'm Ron, and I go back to the days when Fifth and Forbes were two-way streets. And it was a venture to get from the cathedral to Langley Hall. With the imminent demise of the O'Hara parking garage, what is the university's plan to maintain or increase parking, especially for alums who want to come back for university events?
I'm hearing a nasty parking story in your background.
No, I'm just curious.
So parking's interesting. I'm going to give you two answers that are a little bit contradictory. But when you look at the campus master plan, one of the things we wanted to do was not simply look at the set of buildings, because you quickly get into we're going to build this, we lose that, and we wanted to really look at what happened to the region right here. So that plan includes a look at what's happening at UPMC, because that affects parking, what's happening on the transportation corridor. That includes things like the bus rapid transit that the region is proposing to increase transportation, the new bike lanes. This is now a multimodal city. Wouldn't believe it when I was here, right? The idea of bike lanes in Pittsburgh was not something that was top of mind in the late 1980s. But that's all happening. And so we did want to make sure that was planned there. The short answer is these projects tend to be putting in parking. So what's actually going to happen on that one is a new parking facility up on the hill as part of the offset. And it moves the parking into a better location and gives us a chance to re-landscape that hill between the lower and upper campus and make that a real approach. The rec center is kind of interesting. It's obviously a vertical rec center, right? It's a vertical building with gyms and other facilities going up. But one of the interesting things is if you go into the rec center, when you come out, you're right at the level where those upper dormitories are. So it creates a pathway between our campus. But the parking, the offsets are already built into that. And whether we're looking at the athletics plan, there's a plan for some new facilities on the athletics campus up around the Pete. Whether you're looking at academic buildings like Bigelow 1, the old Syria Mosque site behind us, we've had to factor in those transportation. Now, the other thing that's driving this, and this is where my crystal ball is not very good, when you talk to city planners, they're quite convinced that the demand for parking ultimately is going to go down, or it should go down. And so, in fact, there's a lot of actual incentives in many cases to reduce support and funding so that we don't overbuild parking. And some of that, of course, is, if you're skeptical, wishful thinking. But some of it's really driven around very legitimate issues about, that as we move back into these urban environments, and Pitt is benefiting from this tremendously, we don't want to create a logjam where you simply can't get in here. It's already too difficult. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is build in a long-range transportation plan with the region so we understand how these things may or may not move. And that may mean more ride-sharing, Uber-like programs for our Pitt students in this area, combinations of transport, maybe partnering with CMU and UPMC so we don't line our buses up behind each other on the same routes, and doing things and moving to electric vehicles, which is already happening as well. So in the long range, your parking spot may look a little different depending on where the whole transportation area goes. But in the short term, the projects are all providing offsetting transportation parking solutions. So hopefully, when I see you next year here, you'll have found a parking spot without any trouble.
How about one last question?
This one right here?
Right here.
Ron Homa, Arts and Science 1959, Education 1963. My wife Marty, Education 1960. We met at Pitt. We just celebrated our 59th wedding anniversary. So Pitt's
Happy anniversary.
Pitt is very special for us. As a large and major university, how do you balance a very strong undergraduate program with a very aggressive research program?
Well, it's a great question. I'm going to tell you, though, that from my perspective, I actually rarely think of it as a balancing problem. And the reason for that is that while they're separate, right, you have an educational mission, a tuition-based business model, a very different set of things on the undergraduate educational side. On the research side, we have predominantly external funding and most of the activity being done by graduate and postgraduate students and fellows and faculty. And that would lead to this balancing problem. But what happens is there's a fulcrum, and the fulcrum are the faculty. And it turns out that's where those dual missions come together in a very direct way. And so it actually works better than you think. So one of the things that is attracting students to research-intensive comprehensive universities like Pitt is that presence of that research enterprise on campus. In fact, if you look nationally, what's really interesting, and many of you may have seen articles about this, small four-year liberal arts colleges, the kind we often thought about, are seeing dramatic enrollment decreases. They're in trouble. And the students are kind of voting with, we're seeing unprecedented demand at these large research-based universities. So the undergraduate students, and I think it's for two reasons. One is the quality of the faculty. You're attracting faculty at the top of their game who are at the edge of their fields, and the students like that and appreciate that. You saw the story about Graham Hatfull. And the other one is that while we used to pay lip service to the idea of undergraduates participating in the research enterprise, that's no longer lip service. It's becoming quite real. My son just graduated from Pitt a couple months ago. He started out, yeah, thanks. Yeah, yeah, I agree. He came in as a biology major, and he joined a lab freshman year and was involved in some neuroscience work, including publications, right as a freshman, right out of high school. And that is not an uncommon situation here. Our undergraduate students are told that they should expect to do undergraduate research or a co-op or internship during their time here, all of them. And that research enterprise makes that possible. So the experience-based learning, in other words, getting in and doing things, whether that's clinical work in the hospitals. Again, our students are in our hospitals. One of the things about Pitt nursing that stands out is how much clinical time they spend. And the hospitals tell us that. Your students know how to be in a hospital because of that time. Whether it's the engineers in their co-op programs where they're working and working with engineering firms in the region, that is becoming an increasingly important part of an undergraduate education. And it's one of the reasons why these debates about online education haven't played out the way people expect, because online you can't produce that kind of experience base. So instead of a balancing act, I kind of see a synergy. Now, the synergy can be broken if things get too unbalanced. And the thing that drives that is the size of the faculty, the quality of the faculty, and that's where we make real decisions about how much bigger can Pitt be, how much bigger do we want to be, and what are the size to make sure that those two things stay in balance. That's a great question.
All right. Well, I think we're out of time, unfortunately.
Well, happy homecoming, everybody. Hail to Pitt.
Thank you. Hail to Pitt.